Hey everybody, it's John here with the Cloud Bureau, and today I have for you the fourth in our series of videos on creating effective data dictionary reports in Salesforce. We've talked about field classification metadata, we've talked about how to create and manage fields from a data dictionary aware perspective, and in this video we're going to talk about setting up the field dictionary report type. We're going to create a sample report for a field dictionary for the account object. We'll talk about some of the limitations of that report, and then we'll look at what it looks like to add new objects to your roster of data dictionaries. Without further ado, we'll hop into Salesforce and get started. Now I'm in Salesforce, and I'm going to hop over to Setup. I have a Setup tab up here. I'm in the Developer Edition org. As always, important to say that if you are doing administrative activities like building report types and other kinds of things, you're usually going to want to do that in a development org and then migrate it forward. So working in a sandbox as you're putting this together is a great way to go, and we highly recommend it. We're going to create a new custom report type. And for the primary object, we're going to select what's called the entity definition object. And you can think of an entity definition just as the metadata about an object in your org, whether that's an account, a contact, some other custom object. For the display label, I'm going to call this field dictionary. And for the API name, we'll remove the underscore. And our description will say custom report type for field dictionary reporting. We're going to store this in the other or the administrative reports category, and I'm going to go ahead and deploy it. Now, the top level object in our report type is that entity definition, and we're going to relate two more objects to this. If I click to do that and go to look at what's available to me, you'll see that I have two different things. And what we want here is the field definitions. We're also going to relate a third object, and we're going to use this entity particles. In both cases, I'm going to leave the default where we must have related records to show the parent record. Now, the easiest way to talk about the difference between a field definition and an entity particle is with reference to compound fields in Salesforce. The best example of a compound field is an address field. And if you're in an org and you've created a field recently, you'll know that Salesforce has relatively recently given administrators the capacity to create custom compound address fields. But we can think about it just in terms of the basic billing address field on an account object. If you've worked with the billing address field in the back end of Salesforce, you know that the field is called billing address, but that it comprises a range of subfields or field parts that compose that address. So you can think of this as billing street, city, state or province, postal code, country, geolocation, various kinds of things like that. The way we can see those in a data dictionary report is by using the entity particle object. The particles are those individual component parts of that billing address field. Now, in some cases, or in a lot of cases, there's a one-to-one relationship between a field definition and an entity particle. If you're using a pick list field or a basic text field or something of that nature, then that relationship will be one-to-one. But there are a range of situations in which the field definition comprises multiple particles, sometimes a name field, almost always a compound address field. Okay, we're going to save this, and we're going to go in and edit our layout. Now, because we're primarily focused on reporting on fields in this layout, I don't need most of the information in this entity definition section. It's just noise. We will talk about what it looks like to report on the in-use objects in your org in the next video. Because we don't need most of this noise, I'm going to get rid of almost all of the fields in this entity definition section. The ones I'm going to keep are this qualified API name and master label. So let me just do that quickly. The reason we're keeping the qualified API name and the master label is so that we can group the fields by the object name, essentially. And that's all we really need to do. Now, if I wanted to, as with any custom report type, I could adjust the display name for these things. So for example, for entity definitions, I could just say objects. For field definitions, I might leave that the same. For field particles, I might say field particles instead of entity particles, just to make it a little bit more user-friendly. Now, one field I am going to edit the name for is the data owner. So you know in field classification metadata that we have the capacity to specify a data owner for a field as either a user or a public group. And I'm going to change this from the default display name, which is data owner :name, to just data owner ID. And I'll say more about why when we actually look at a report. All right, that looks good. We're going to save this and we're going to close it. Now let's look at what it looks like to instantiate one of these reports. I'm going to head back into Salesforce and we'll refresh just to make sure everything's ready to go for us. We're going to click to create a new report. I'm going to change the category of report type to all, and we'll search for that field dictionary report type that we just created, and we'll start a report. For the purposes of this demo, we're going to call this the account field dictionary report. And for the filters, we're going to make some quick adjustments just to make sure we're seeing all fields regardless of when they're created or changed. We'll change the last modified date to all time. And so that we can scope this down to just the account object, I'm going to grab the qualified API name field from the object section and say that it's equal to account, which is just the API name of the account object. All right. In the outline, we're going to head over and we're going to get rid of the default fields that are here. And we're going to start to do a number of things. The first thing I'm going to do is group this by a number of fields. I'm going to use the qualified API name of the object. The next thing I'm going to use is from the field definition, we're going to get the field usage field. And then we're going to get the master label from the field definition. In the columns, we're going to add a range of fields. We're going to get the label, but we're going to get it from the entity particle, and you'll see why in just a minute. I don't really care about my subtotals, so I'm going to get rid of those. I'm also going to get the qualified API name from the entity particle or the field particle. Okay. The rest of them I'm going to get from the field definition itself. We're going to grab the data type. We're going to grab the description. We're going to get the data owner ID, which we relabeled. We will get the data sensitivity level, and we'll also get the compliance categorization. So this field dictionary that we're making, the audience of this would really be a data steward or a data governor. It might be something that you use in a situation of internal audit, something of that nature. It's certainly possible to create field dictionaries for other audiences. For example, if you wanted to provide a data dictionary to a contract developer, the data points or the metadata about a field that a developer cares about when they're extending the org is going to be very different. They might care about the underlying sort of raw data type of a field. They might care about the scale of a number field, something of that nature. And so you can have different kinds of field dictionaries for different audiences. But we're going to stick with looking at descriptions and some of the field classification metadata here. All right, we're going to save this and run. I'm going to leave the report name. I'm going to clean up the API name of the report a little bit. And in the folder, I'm going to put it in a folder that I've created called Data Dictionary Reports. And we'll save this. Now what we have in our account field dictionary, we see that all the fields that we care about are accounts. That's scoped by virtue of our filter that we have on the qualified API name of the object or the entity definition. We've grouped it by field usage so that we can see which fields have we said are active, which ones have we said are administrative in nature, what are deprecate candidates, what are unused standard fields, and some unused system fields. Now you'll notice that there are a range of fields here that have a null value for field usage. And the fields that we see here are all ones for which we actually can't specify a field usage value. You might leave these here. You might also want to get rid of them, and I like to get rid of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and re-edit this report, and I'm going to add first one filter, and we'll see what the result of that is. I'm going to say that for the entity particle qualified API name, that it's not equal to a range of system fields. Paste that in here, and we'll apply it. I'm going to save this and run, and we'll see the result. So we've taken the fields that have a null value for field usage, and we've brought it down to 2. If we go look at that filter, you'll see that I've gotten rid of last modified by ID, created by ID, master record ID is deleted, and the system mod stamp. Even through the metadata API, it's not possible to specify field classification metadata like field usage for those fields. And my suspicion is that those actually reside at the level of the generic S-object class rather than any kind of species of the S-object class like an account. I like to remove those from the report simply because we can't actually interact with those. They're not things that can be deleted. They're typically administrative in nature. And so I screen those out using the qualified API name on the entity particle or field particle section of the report. Now that leaves us with 2. And you'll see here that both of these have an interesting kind of qualifier at the end of the qualified API name. It's __ PC. If you've ever worked in an org that has person accounts, you'll know that these are custom fields that are originally created on the contact object, but that become available on the account object by virtue of the person account structure. Now, interestingly, you can set the field usage for the field that you've created on the contact record specifically, but for any custom field that you create on the contact object that shows up as a person account field on the account object where it has this __ PC, you can't actually set field classification metadata directly to that. If you try to do it in the UI, it's going to redirect you to the contact object. So if you're using person accounts, you'll probably want to think about your dictionaries in terms of accounts, person accounts, and contacts and the different dynamics there. For our purposes today, I'm simply going to screen out custom fields that were sort of accrued to the account object by virtue of the person account situation we have here. So we're going to add another filter. And we'll say that the qualified API name of the field particle does not contain __ PC. And we'll save and run. Now this gives us a very clean data dictionary for fields on our account object. We can see the label, the qualified API name, the data type, the description that we've provided, the data owner ID, the data sensitivity level, and the compliance categorization if that has been specified. Now, just to go back to something we said when we were creating the report type itself, the reason I alias the data owner name field as data owner ID is because that's actually a polymorphic field. You'll note that when you're specifying the data owner for a particular field, you can specify that as a user or a public group. And because of that, we lose access to some of the access to the object to which it's pointing. So we can't actually put the person's name or the group's name here. It's really just going to show their ID. You'll see here that my user record is the data owner for the vast majority of these, and that's where I see this prefix 005. That's always pointing to a user record. We do have one example I'll show you really quickly that's owned by a group, and that's going to be 00G. Here we are. It's in this number of employees field. You'll see that 00G, that prefix for the ID, is pointing to a public group. So that's one of the limitations of this field dictionary report, is that we can't actually see the sort of UI friendly name of the data owner, whether that's a user or a public group. It's always going to show the ID. But that gets us a field dictionary. And we have our active fields and then our fields that are in other usage categories, including administrative fields and deprecate candidates. One of the powerful things about this as an administrator is that if you go through the diligence and the routine of creating fields and managing fields in a data dictionary aware way, you always have a live, accessible roster of the fields that are actively in use for your org. And if you're going to create a new field, you can always check the data dictionary to see, are there duplicate candidates or unused standard fields that could be used for the new development situation that you have encountered. So good way to do this without cluttering up your objects with fields that are duplicative. One last thing we want to do is talk about how easy it is to extend these dictionaries. So I have this for the account field dictionary. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over and I'm going to click next to my edit button and I'm going to save this as, and we'll call it the demo field dictionary. We have an object in our org called demo. I'll clean up the API name. And we'll leave it in the folder for data dictionary reports. Now, again, this is right now just showing the account, and all I have to do to make it show the demo object is head into my filters and change the qualified API name to the API name of the demo object. And we'll save that and run, and you'll see that we now have a data dictionary also for the demo field dictionary object. All that to say is that once you've set up the report type for a field dictionary and you've created a report for a specific object, it's easy to add additional objects simply by saving forward one of those field dictionaries that you have and changing the qualified API name to show the object that you want to show. That's it for this video. In our next and final video in this series, we'll talk about reporting on the in-use objects in our org. We'll look forward to seeing you then. If this video was useful to you, please like and subscribe if you would like to, and we will see you next time.